Right now, in this very moment, there's a painful truth you're avoiding. Put down everything and truly examine what's happening inside your chest. That gnawing sensation, that persistent anxiety eating away at your peace of mind, it stems from a fundamental misunderstanding about human nature and attraction. You've been operating under a broken paradigm, believing that if you simply offer enough kindness, remain endlessly available, and provide unwavering emotional support, you'll somehow earn the devotion you crave. This is the greatest lie ever sold to modern men. You've watched the pattern repeat itself countless times. The genuinely good men get overlooked. The ones who bend over backwards find themselves trapped in the friend zone, and those willing to sacrifice everything for her attention become the very ones she dismisses with contempt. The marketplace of human desire doesn't operate on fairness or moral deservingness. It operates on psychological principles that most people spend their entire lives never understanding. Principles that separate those who command respect effortlessly from those who beg for scraps of affection. If you enjoy stories like this, consider subscribing. Most people who watch aren't subscribed yet. The Italian political philosopher Niccolò Machiavelli decoded something profound about human behavior that contemporary society desperately wants to keep hidden from your awareness. Through his ruthless observation of power dynamics, court intrigue, and human manipulation, he discovered that people are fundamentally driven by self-interest, prone to deception, easily swayed by emotions, and remarkably ungrateful for what comes too easily. He recognized that authority and influence are never granted to those who display virtue alone, but rather seized by those who understand strategic positioning and psychological leverage. You're consuming this content right now because somewhere deep inside, you've grown exhausted from playing the passenger role in your own romantic life. The confusion has become unbearable, the psychological games have drained your energy, and the passive-aggressive silence has left you feeling powerless and frustrated. You've watched other men seemingly effortlessly capture and maintain feminine attention, while you struggle and strain for even a moment of genuine interest. The differentiating factor isn't physical appearance, financial resources, or social status, though those elements can play supporting roles. The real distinction lies in something far more fundamental, something called frame control, the invisible architecture of how you perceive yourself and project that perception into every interaction. Over the course of this deep exploration, we're going to systematically dismantle every comfortable lie you've internalized about feminine psychology, romantic connection, and relationship dynamics. We'll apply the cold, calculating efficiency of Machiavellian strategic thinking to the seemingly chaotic and unpredictable world of modern romance. I'm going to hand you 7 psychological master keys, not superficial pickup techniques or manipulative lines, but fundamental shifts in how you perceive reality itself. These are cognitive tools that, once properly integrated into your mental operating system, will make it virtually impossible for anyone to emotionally manipulate, control, or destabilize you ever again. However, I must offer you a serious warning before we proceed further. Once you truly see and understand the mechanical systems of psychological control, once you recognize the invisible strings that guide human behavior, you cannot unsee this knowledge. You'll begin noticing these patterns everywhere, in every relationship, every social interaction, every power dynamic playing out around you. If you're genuinely ready to stop being the fan in the audience and start being the prize everyone competes for, if you're prepared to have your comfortable assumptions shattered, then continue watching. Let's begin the systematic autopsy of your self-defeating nice guy persona and rebuild something far more powerful in its place. Let's begin with perhaps the most counterintuitive, yet brutally effective economic truth about human desire and value perception. Consider this thought experiment. If breathable air suddenly became a commodity that required purchase, under what circumstances would you actually pay for it? The answer reveals everything. You would only pay when you were drowning, when scarcity made you desperate. Right now, in her life, you represent unlimited free air. You're omnipresent, constantly available, always just a text message away, perpetually orbiting around her like a satellite with no other celestial purpose. The moment she shows even the faintest flicker of interest or attention, you immediately clear your entire schedule. rearrange your priorities, and make yourself available. In your mind, you're demonstrating commitment, loyalty, and devotion. But here's what's actually happening at the psychological level. You're broadcasting a signal of low marketplace value, communicating that you have nothing more important than waiting for her acknowledgement. Machiavelli wrote extensively about this phenomenon in political contexts, noting that familiarity breeds contempt, that the more people see of a leader, the less they fear him, and consequently, the less they revere and respect him. This identical principle applies with devastating accuracy to romantic attraction and desire dynamics. When you make yourself constantly present and available, you rob her of access to the most potent neurochemical drug in the human brain: imagination. The human mind is wired to fill empty spaces with fantasies, projections, and idealized scenarios. When you're absent, when you're not immediately responsive, when there's space and silence in the communication, her mind has no choice but to activate and think about you. She begins wondering what you're doing, who you're spending time with, whether you're thinking about her, whether she's even on your radar. In that space of uncertainty and ambiguity, her imagination constructs a version of you that becomes far more compelling and addictive than the actual reality of your constant presence. But you systematically rob her of this experience. You suffocate the potential for mystery with your overwhelming availability and desperate need for connection. To genuinely control the relational dynamic, you must become a master of calculated, strategic absence. This is not about cruel ghosting or toxic game playing for manipulation's sake. This is about genuinely prioritizing your personal mission, your purpose, your growth over her attention and validation. When you're authentically busy constructing your empire, training your physical body, developing your skills, expanding your mind, and pursuing ambitious goals, your absence isn't a tactic or manipulation strategy. It becomes a natural byproduct of your actual high value. Women possess an almost supernatural ability to distinguish between a man who's pretending to be busy as a manipulation technique to generate attraction and a man who is genuinely building a life bigger and more important than any single relationship. The first man is a transparent manipulator she can see through instantly. The second man is a king living in his purpose, and that's irresistibly magnetic. You must develop deep comfort with silence and empty space in communication. When you send her a message and she takes 3 hours to respond, the old version of you, the version trapped in scarcity mindset, would immediately panic. He would spiral into anxiety, double text, triple text, seek reassurance, and demonstrate his desperate need for her acknowledgement. The Machiavellian version of you, the strategically aware version, simply places the phone down and redirects attention back to meaningful work. You don't punish her with deliberately vindictive silence. You simply refuse to reward her behavior with your anxiety and desperate need for immediate response. You must deeply understand and internalize that humans are biologically hardwired to chase what retreats and run from what pursues. This is fundamental hunter-gatherer psychology embedded in our evolutionary circuitry. If you're constantly running towards her, seeking her attention, pursuing her validation, you force her to instinctively run away simply to maintain psychological distance and space. The solution is elegant in its simplicity. Stop running. Stand absolutely still in your purpose and calling. Turn your back to the relationship and walk with determination toward your goals, your mission, your vision for who you're becoming. Watch with fascination how quickly she turns and begins following you, how rapidly she starts initiating contact, how her interest escalates when you're not available at her convenience. Drop this in the comments if you understand this principle. My absence is expensive. But here's where most men misunderstand and misapply this principle, turning it into something toxic rather than transformative. The goal isn't to artificially create absence while secretly obsessing over her responses and checking your phone every 30 seconds. That's just absence in physical form while remaining mentally and emotionally enslaved. True strategic absence comes from genuine abundance mindset, from having multiple areas of your life that genuinely demand your attention, energy, and focus. When you're building a business that matters, when you're training for a physical goal that challenges you, When you're developing skills that will compound over time, when you're nurturing friendships and communities that energize you, the absence becomes authentic rather than performed. She can feel this difference energetically, even if she can't articulate it consciously. And what about when the old fears resurface? When that voice in your head screams that if you don't respond immediately, you'll lose her forever. That's the moment you recognize you're still operating from scarcity, still believing she's your only option, still trapped in the mental prison of needing external validation. The Machiavellian mindset recognizes that any woman who would lose interest because you have a life outside of her wasn't the right woman to begin with. The human brain is simultaneously attracted to and bored by patterns. This neurological paradox creates one of the most powerful tools in psychological influence. Consider how slot machines function in casinos. If a slot machine paid out exactly the same amount every single time you pulled the lever, you would play it for approximately 10 minutes, collect your predictable winnings, and walk away feeling completely satisfied, but utterly bored. The activity would hold zero addictive potential, but slot machines are engineered differently, designed using principles of behavioral psychology. They pay out randomly and unpredictably. Sometimes you win big, sometimes you lose everything, sometimes you almost win and miss by one symbol. That unpredictability, that intermittent reinforcement schedule, spikes dopamine in the brain to levels that neuroscientists have compared to cocaine use. It creates one of the strongest addiction mechanisms known to psychological science, which is precisely why casinos generate billions in revenue from this single psychological principle. Now apply this framework to your behavioral patterns in relationships. Most men are devastatingly predictable in their emotional responses. They're predictably nice regardless of how they're treated, predictably angry when disrespected, or predictably insecure when threatened. She knows exactly which buttons to push to generate your smile. She knows precisely what to say to make you apologize and seek her approval. You've become a book she's already read cover to cover. Why would she open that book again when there's nothing new to discover? Machiavelli advised political leaders to embody both the lion and the fox simultaneously. The lion represents strength, power, and controlled aggression. The fox represents cunning intelligence, adaptability, and strategic elusiveness. You must integrate both archetypes into your personality. You must systematically break the predictable pattern of your own behavioral responses. If you're typically stoic and emotionally controlled, occasionally surprise her with a moment of intense poetic passion or vulnerable authenticity. If you're usually affectionate and emotionally expressive, sometimes pull back completely and become cold, analytical, and distant for a period. This isn't about being cruel or deliberately hurting her emotions. This is about reminding her through your actions that your affection isn't a guaranteed salary she receives regardless of behavior. It's a commission-based reward that must be earned through her treatment of you and alignment with your standards. When she cannot predict your emotional reaction to her behavior, when she can't manipulate your responses with calculated actions, she's forced to pay genuine attention to you. She has to study your patterns, analyze your behavior, walk carefully around your boundaries. This constant focus, this need to understand and predict you, this becomes the psychological seed of obsession. Many viewers will misinterpret this as advocating for being mean, harsh, or emotionally abusive. That's not what this principle teaches. This is about possessing a full range of authentic emotions that belong to you, not reactive emotions that she controls by pushing buttons. Most men function as emotional mirrors in relationships. If she's happy, they automatically become happy. If she's sad, they absorb her sadness. If she's cold and distant, they panic and become desperate. You're essentially allowing her weather patterns to dictate your entire emotional climate. To genuinely control the frame of interaction, you must become your own self-sustaining weather system. You can maintain happiness and contentment when she's distant. You can remain calm and grounded when she's chaotic and dramatic. This disrupts her control mechanisms completely. When she realizes she cannot simply push an emotional button and receive her expected reaction, when her manipulation attempts fail to generate the response she's conditioned you to provide, She starts seeking your validation instead of expecting it as guaranteed. She starts asking herself a question that changes everything. What is he actually thinking? And the moment a woman finds herself asking that question about you, the moment she's trying to decode your internal world, you've fundamentally won the psychological game. But there's a deeper level to this that most men never discover. Principle 3. The mirror of Narcissus. Here's an uncomfortable truth about human nature that most people resist acknowledging. We are all fundamentally narcissistic creatures. Every single person cares more about themselves than they care about anyone else. This isn't a moral judgment. It's simply an evolutionary survival mechanism hardwired into our psychology. Machiavelli understood this principle at a profound level. He recognized that to effectively control and influence people, you never tell them directly what you want from them. Instead, you show them what they desire. You reveal to them the path to their own self-interest, and they'll follow that path willingly. So what does a woman desire more intensely than anything else? To be truly seen, to be genuinely understood, to feel like the main character in a compelling movie, to have someone witness the parts of herself she keeps hidden from the world. Most men approach attraction by trying to impress women with displays of their own value. They brag about career accomplishments, expensive possessions, gym achievements, social connections. In their minds, they're demonstrating high value and desirability. In reality, they're actually displaying deep insecurity and need for external validation. They're essentially saying through their behavior, "Please look at me. Please acknowledge my worth. Please think I'm good enough for you." The Machiavellian approach operates in precisely the opposite direction. You transform yourself into a mirror. You talk significantly less. You listen significantly more, but you listen with predatory intensity and focus. You ask her questions that nobody else has ever asked her. You systematically peel back the layers of her psychological defenses. Why do you actually do that behavior? What are you genuinely afraid of underneath that fear? You show the world this tough exterior, but I can see the vulnerable little girl hiding behind that protective armor. When you analyze her with this depth, when you speak directly to her shadow self that she keeps hidden, you create a psychological bond that feels like destiny to her. She'll think to herself, "I've never felt this level of connection with anyone before. He understands me in ways nobody else does." She experiences this profound feeling because you're reflecting her own ego back at her with crystal clarity. You're giving her the stage, making her the center of attention. But here's where the strategic control mechanism lies hidden. You're the one holding the mirror. You control when to hold it up and when to put it down. You decide when to give that intense focus and when to withdraw it. When you provide someone with deep, intense psychological validation, they become neurochemically addicted to that feeling. And when you strategically withdraw that validation, when you stop asking those penetrating questions, when you stop looking at her with that consuming intensity, she will do almost anything to get it back. She'll chase the reflection of herself that she saw in your eyes, that elevated version of herself that only seems to exist in your presence. If you're starting to see these patterns in your own relationships, hit that like button and let me know in the comments what clicked for you. Use this psychological tool carefully and ethically. Don't waste energy flattering her physical beauty. Every man does that. It's background noise to her at this point. Instead, validate her effort, validate her struggle, validate her darkness and complexity. Validate the specific parts of her personality that she hides from the world, the parts she's ashamed of or fears others will reject. Make her feel simultaneously exposed and safe, vulnerable and protected. That specific combination creates psychological intimacy at a level far deeper than physical intimacy. And psychological intimacy is a chain stronger than steel, binding people together in ways that transcend surface-level attraction. When she feels you truly see her, not just the mask she presents to the world, but the real person underneath, she'll become bonded to you in ways that defy logical explanation. There's a fatal error corrupted into your psychological operating system, a bug in your mental software that sabotages attraction before it even begins. You've been systematically programmed by Disney fairy tales, Hollywood romance narratives, and well-intentioned but misguided maternal advice to believe that women are goddesses, that they're pure and perfect beings of light who must be worshipped from below. This is called the pedestal effect, and it's one of the most repulsive behavioral patterns to high-value women. Think about the logical implications for a moment. If you treat her like a celebrity, she has absolutely no choice but to treat you like a fan. Fans don't get intimate access to celebrities. Fans pay for tickets. Fans wait in line. Fans are spectators watching from a distance. Fans are consumers, not equals. Machiavelli taught that effective leaders must see the world exactly as it is, not as they wish it to be. You must develop this same ruthless clarity about women. She is human. She has significant flaws. She has deep insecurities. She's made terrible decisions. She goes to the bathroom. She wakes up with bad breath and messy hair. She's not a perfect angel descended from heaven. When you look at her with worshipful eyes, when you place her on that pedestal above you, she doesn't feel flattered or special. She feels your inferiority. She senses at an instinctive level that you believe she's out of your league. And here's the critical principle of female mating psychology. Women are hypergamous. They date up or across in social hierarchies. They never date down. It's biological programming designed to secure the best possible resources for offspring. By placing her on a pedestal, you're voluntarily positioning yourself beneath her in the social hierarchy. You're signaling clearly, I am not your equal. I am below you. I am lucky to receive your attention. To genuinely control the relational dynamic, you must destroy the pedestal completely. You must look at her with level eyes, as an equal, or even evaluating whether she meets your standards. You must be willing to disagree with her opinions. You must be willing to call her out on bad behavior. You must be willing to tease her, challenge her assumptions, make fun of her quirks. When a beautiful woman spends her entire life surrounded by men who stutter, agree with everything she says, and seek her approval, the man who says calmly, I think you're completely wrong about that, creates a shock to her psychological system. It signals that you're not intimidated by her beauty. It communicates that you value your own truth and integrity more than her approval. This is the foundation of genuine respect. She cannot respect a man she can walk all over. She cannot love a man she doesn't respect. These are hierarchical requirements in feminine psychology. Cliffhanger. By taking her off the pedestal, you're actually giving her the opportunity to genuinely love you. You're inviting her down to reality, where authentic connection happens between equals. But this requires something most men are terrified to do. Stop apologizing for your existence. Stop laughing at jokes that aren't funny to you. Stop agreeing with opinions you think are stupid. Be real. Be ruthless with your personal standards. If she steps out of line, if she crosses your boundaries, check her. Not with anger or aggression, but with amused mastery, like an adult responding to a child who's misbehaved. Are you always this much trouble, or am I special? Change the entire frame of the interaction from, I hope she likes me, to, is she actually good enough for me? Does she meet my standards? This mental shift alone will transform how you show up in every interaction. Machiavelli observed in political negotiations that the person who speaks the least consistently holds the most power. In any negotiation, the person who rushes to fill the silence loses leverage. In any argument, the person who shouts loudest loses respect. In seduction, the person who over-explains loses mystery. You talk too much. You explain yourself excessively because you're afraid of being misunderstood. You text paragraph-length messages because you're afraid she won't grasp the nuance of what you're communicating. You constantly seek to clarify your intentions. Stop. Your words are leaking your power like water through a broken dam. Mystery cannot exist when you've provided a complete biography. If you tell her your entire life story on the first date, if you reveal all your vulnerabilities, fears, and insecurities immediately, you become a finished puzzle. and finished puzzles go back in the box. Nobody studies them further. You must remain an incomplete puzzle, a mystery that demands further investigation. Use silence as a strategic weapon. When she tests you, when she throws an emotional tantrum, when she tries to provoke a reaction to confirm her power over you, give her nothing. Look at her with calm, unreadable eyes. Let the silence stretch and expand until it becomes uncomfortable, until the tension builds. She will rush to fill that silence. She'll start explaining herself. She'll start seeking your approval. Silence projects unshakable confidence. It implies that you're completely comfortable in your own skin. It implies that you're evaluating her, judging whether she meets your standards. It triggers her anxiety loop. Why isn't he reacting? What is he thinking? Did I do something wrong? Remember your positioning. You are the prince. The prince doesn't justify his decrees. He states them clearly, or better yet, he simply acts. Never say, I'm a high-value man. Never say, I won't tolerate disrespect. Just punish disrespect with absence. Just demonstrate value through consistent action. Words are for the weak who can't act. Silence is for the sovereign who doesn't need to explain. Master the strategic pause. Before you answer any question she asks, wait 3 full seconds. Look at her calmly. Breathe deeply, then speak with intention. That tiny gap, that brief delay, disrupts her autopilot response patterns. It demonstrates deliberate control. It makes your words weigh 1,000 pounds when you finally speak. We've arrived at the nuclear weapon of dark psychology, the ultimate power move, the one thing that absolutely cannot be faked or performed, the complete, genuine willingness to walk away from any situation and never look back. Machiavelli wrote that a prince should never rely on the goodwill of others, but only on his own strength and resources. If you need her, she owns you completely. If you prefer her but can live fully without her, you own the world. Most men remain trapped in bad situations, tolerating disrespect, accepting mediocrity, enduring manipulation because they're absolutely terrified of the void. They're afraid of being alone, of starting over, of facing themselves without the distraction of a relationship. They negotiate from a position of weakness, unable to enforce boundaries because they fear the consequences of enforcement. The moment you internalize at a cellular level, truly and deeply, that you are the prize, everything transforms. The moment you realize that there are billions of women on this planet but only one you, the fear evaporates. This is not about bluffing. Women possess an almost supernatural sixth sense for detecting bluffs. They know instantly when you're pretending to be ready to leave. You must actually cultivate and build a life so rich, so driven by compelling purpose, so full of options and opportunities, that losing her would be an inconvenience rather than a tragedy. When she knows, when she feels at an instinctive level that you will open the door for her to leave the moment she disrespects your boundaries, she won't walk out. She'll close the door and stay. Because psychological safety is found in the container of a strong man's boundaries. If your walls are made of paper, if your boundaries collapse the moment she tests them, she feels unsafe at a primal level. If your walls are made of stone, if your no genuinely means no, she can relax into her feminine energy. She wants to be led, but she can only be led by a man who knows where he's going with or without her. This is the paradox of love that poets have explored for centuries. You only keep what you're willing to lose. Cling desperately to sand and it slips through your fingers. Open your hand and it sits there peacefully. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give another man is showing him the truth about relationship dynamics. Build your kingdom first. Your mission, your purpose, your empire. If she wants to be the queen of that kingdom, she must abide by the laws and standards of the kingdom. If not, the gate is open. That energy is intoxicating to feminine psychology. That is the energy of a man who cannot be controlled, manipulated, or dominated. And therefore, paradoxically, he becomes the man every woman wants to control. And failing that, the man every woman wants to submit to. This isn't about being harsh or cold. This is about having such abundance in your life that no single person can hold your happiness hostage. Let's zoom out and examine the bigger picture we've been painting. We titled this exploration of Machiavellian principles to control dynamics in relationships. You clicked and watched because you wanted power over her, control over the situation, mastery over attraction. But have you noticed the consistent pattern woven through every single one of these psychological principles? Calculated absence, emotional unpredictability, destroying the pedestal, mastering silence, walking away. None of these principles are actually about controlling her. Every single one of them is about controlling yourself. That is the ultimate twist of dark psychology that most people never grasp. You cannot control another human being with free will. You can only manipulate variables and create environments. But you can control yourself with absolute tyranny. The reason you failed repeatedly in the past isn't because women are too complicated or because you lack physical attractiveness. It's because you were a slave to your own impulses, addicted to your lust, desperate for validation, terrified of loneliness. When you conquer those enslaved parts within yourself, when you become a man who doesn't need anything from anyone, when you become the source of your own validation and happiness, you transform into a psychological black hole of gravity. She doesn't submit to your force or aggression. She submits to your order and stability. She doesn't submit to your anger. She submits to your unshakable peace. Control isn't gripping someone's neck. Control is stilling your own mind. When you become the most grounded, centered element in any room, everything else naturally revolves around you. That's psychological physics. That's nature's hierarchy. So don't go out there attempting to play manipulative tricks on women. Go out there and ruthlessly govern your own mind with discipline and awareness. Kill the nice guy persona. He's weak and he's a liar, pretending to be good while expecting rewards. Birth the prince archetype. He's strong and he's honest about his expectations. The world is waiting for you to take your throne. But the throne exists inside you. It's your self-respect, your boundaries, your mission, your unshakable frame. If you're ready to stop begging for scraps and start ruling your own life, type this in the comments. I choose power. And remember, the next video will take you even deeper into the shadows of human psychology. You've learned how to stand firm in your power. Next, we teach you how to move strategically through the world. Don't miss it. Subscribe now.